Hey man, she's busy right now. She'll call you later. Keep her, bro. She's your problem now. I'm Jake Rodriguez, 36 years old, and until about 3 weeks ago, I genuinely believed I had everything figured out. Licensed electrician with 12 years under my belt. IBEW union member, pulling down $78,000 a year. Wife who seemed happy enough managing her medical practice, and a best friend who'd been like family since high school shop class. I was living proof that you can wire an entire commercial building blindfolded, but still be completely clueless about the short circuits happening in your own life. The kind of clueless that makes you wonder if ignorance actually is bliss, or just really expensive stupidity with better marketing, and a union pension plan that makes you feel financially responsible. My daily routine was predictable enough to set your watch by, which ironically is exactly what I should have been doing. Wake up at 5:30, stumble into the kitchen like an extra from a zombie film, make coffee strong enough to restart a dead car battery, and sit scrolling through my phone while the local news played background noise about traffic jams I'd be sitting in within the hour. I worked residential and commercial electrical installations for Rodriguez and Associates. Yeah, I named my company after myself, because apparently I have the creative imagination of a circuit breaker. Started the business 3 years ago, after getting fed up with working for contractors who cut corners on safety codes. Now I've got proper licensing, full insurance, and enough steady clients to keep 2 full-time guys busy year-round. Thrilling stuff. The kind of job where people's eyes glaze over at parties when you try to explain that you spent 8 hours running 12-gauge wire through ceiling joists without electrocuting yourself or burning down a medical complex. But it paid well enough to cover the mortgage on our $285,000 house and still have money left over for Amanda's expensive taste in everything. My wife Amanda supposedly had this amazing career managing a private medical practice downtown. Real professional operation handling patient records, insurance claims, HIPAA compliance, all that important medical administration stuff that keeps doctors' offices running smoothly and legally. Her business cards read, Amanda Rodriguez, practice manager and compliance officer, which should have been my first massive red flag that something was fundamentally wrong with our life. But I was operating on the intelligence level of a golden retriever who thinks every stranger carrying tools wants to be friends. So, I missed every warning sign completely. Amanda had this whole carefully curated professional aesthetic. Hair always perfectly styled, like she was heading to a medical conference. Outfits that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment, and this bizarre habit of using medical terminology in regular conversation like she was performing surgery on a casual Tuesday evening chat about what to have for dinner. I thought it was just her work personality bleeding into home life. You know, occupational hazard of spending 40 hours a week dealing with patient privacy laws and insurance verification procedures. Turns out plenty of other things were bleeding into our life that I knew absolutely nothing about. We had this decent house in a blue-collar neighborhood where most of the driveways held pickup trucks and utility trailers instead of luxury sedans. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Well, technically the credit union owned about 220,000 of it, but we got to pretend we were responsible adults with equity and property tax bills that reminded us monthly how expensive home ownership really is. 2-car garage where I kept my work truck and enough electrical equipment to wire half the subdivision. Organized like a proper workshop should be. Every tool in its designated spot, spare parts labeled and inventoried, because when you're working with electricity, organization isn't just neat, it's survival. Also had 2 cats, Sparky and Circuit, who spent their days sleeping in sunbeams, streaming through the workshop windows, and knocking my wire strippers off workbenches just to watch me suffer. I love them anyway, because apparently I'm the type who enjoys being emotionally manipulated by creatures who can't even operate a can opener, but somehow understand exactly which electrical components are most expensive to replace. Then there was Carl Mason, my buddy since high school shop class, the guy who knew my Taco Bell order by heart, had a spare key to our garage, and used it so frequently that our mail carrier probably assumed we were running some kind of progressive tool-sharing commune. Carl was that friend who showed up uninvited, raided your beer fridge, borrowed your good drill bits without asking, and made himself so comfortable on your couch that you wondered if he actually paid rent anywhere else, or just rotated between friends' houses like some kind of freeloading nomad with commitment issues. He was funny, helpful, always around when you needed an extra pair of hands on a big electrical job, and apparently always around when you didn't need him there either. But we'll get to that particular dumpster fire in a minute. Carl called himself a general contractor, which was technically true if you ignored the minor detail that he'd never bothered getting properly licensed for anything more complicated than hanging drywall. He ran cash-only renovation work, cutting corners on building permits, and had this side business acquiring construction equipment through what he called creative procurement methods. I always assumed he meant estate sales and Craigslist deals from contractors going out of business. Should have known better. In construction, when something sounds too good to be true, it usually involves either stolen goods or code violations that'll get someone killed. I genuinely thought everything was fine. Better than fine, actually. I thought I'd somehow cracked the code to blue-collar adult life. Steady union job that covered all the bills with room for savings. Wife who smiled at me over morning coffee and seemed proud of my work. Best friend who made me laugh until my sides hurt and never asked to borrow money. And 2 cats who occasionally acknowledged my existence when their food bowls needed filling. What more could any reasonable working man want from life? Maybe I should have wanted my wife to actually be in love with me instead of treating our marriage like a convenient roommate situation with shared health insurance benefits and tax advantages. But hey, hindsight has perfect vision, and apparently mine needed prescription safety glasses and a complete eye exam. Amanda would come home from her compliance meeting smelling like expensive perfume. I definitely never bought her, talking about her incredible professional development opportunities and how busy she was maintaining medical standards for patient privacy protection. I'd nod along like a supportive husband should, heat up some leftovers from whatever I'd thrown in the slow cooker that morning, and ask about her day like any normal married couple. She'd give these vague responses about patient privacy training sessions and insurance verification procedure updates, and I'd just accept it all without question. Why? Because I was operating under the dangerously stupid assumption that my wife wasn't a lying, cheating tornado of federal crime wrapped in medical scrubs and designer handbags that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Carl would swing by for gaming sessions about 3 nights a week, sometimes more when Amanda was working late or attending those mysterious continuing education seminars that seemed to happen every Thursday evening. We'd sit in the living room with controllers in hand, talking trash about our gameplay, while Amanda supposedly attended professional development meetings that would help advance her career in medical administration. Here's the thing that really kills me looking back with the crystal clear vision of someone who's been metaphorically electrocuted by reality. She hasn't shown genuine interest in medical education since probably 2019. I'm talking about a woman who bought expensive medical journals, read exactly 2 articles, then used them as coffee table decorations. But suddenly she's attending continuing education, seminars every single week, like she's pursuing a doctorate in healthcare management. The math wasn't adding up, but I was too busy being a trusting fool to pull out a calculator and actually check the numbers that were right in front of my face. The 3-week electrical project in Millfield started on a Monday that felt like the beginning of just another routine commercial job. Rewiring an entire grain processing facility about 3 hours from home. The kind of industrial electrical work that pays well but keeps you away from home for extended periods while you pull 480-volt cable through concrete conduits in 90-degree heat. The project required staying at Murphy's Motor Lodge, a roadside motel that catered to traveling contractors and long-haul truckers. Picture a place where the carpet had witnessed things that would make a crime scene investigator reconsider their career choices. The Wi-Fi password was literally password 123. And the ice machine sounded like it was slowly dying of mechanical emphysema while dispensing lukewarm water instead of actual ice. My room was on the 2nd floor overlooking a parking lot full of pickup trucks, utility trailers, and commercial vehicles, because apparently the universe runs on the same frequency as a diesel generator and has an equally twisted sense of humor about comfort and aesthetics. During the day, I worked with my crew running electrical lines through industrial machinery that processed grain into various agricultural products. Standard commercial electrical installation. Nothing glamorous, but steady work that paid union scale and kept my guys employed through the slower winter months. The kind of project that requires attention to detail, safety protocols, and enough coffee to keep a small town caffeinated. Evenings were spent at the motel, reviewing the next day's electrical schematics, ordering materials, and calling Amanda to check in like any devoted husband working away from home. She always seemed busy when I called, dealing with patient file updates, insurance claim processing, or preparing for the next day's compliance meetings. Professional, focused, completely dedicated to her medical administration career. Looking back now, those phone conversations should have raised more red flags than a Soviet military parade. But I was operating on the trust level of someone who'd never had a reason to doubt the basic honesty of the people closest to him. It was Tuesday night of my second week when everything changed forever. I'd been lying in bed scrolling through electrical supply catalogs on my phone. Yeah, that's how exciting my evening entertainment was, reviewing conductor specifications and circuit breaker ratings, when my home security app lit up with a motion detection alert at exactly 2:30 a.m. Now, I'd installed our security system myself, about 8 months earlier, right around the time our neighborhood had a string of garage break-ins targeting construction tools and equipment. Nothing fancy, just cameras covering the front door, backyard, and garage, plus a smart baby monitor system Amanda had insisted we get for when we eventually start a family. The whole setup fed into an app on my phone that could show live video feeds, record clips automatically, and even pick up audio from the baby monitor if you adjusted the sensitivity settings high enough. The alert showed motion detected in our garage at 2:30 a.m. on a Tuesday night when Amanda should have been sound asleep and I was 3 hours away troubleshooting industrial electrical systems. That was weird. We don't exactly live in a neighborhood where people go midnight jogging past driveways. And our cats don't typically trigger the garage sensors unless something else was moving around out there. I opened the live feed expecting to see a raccoon, maybe our neighbor's cat that occasionally wandered through our yard, or possibly a delivery truck making some kind of emergency late-night drop-off. Instead, I saw Carl's distinctive white Ford F-150 parked in our garage, sitting in the exact spot where my work truck usually sits when I'm home. My brain literally short-circuited trying to process what I was seeing through my phone screen. Carl's truck in my garage at 2:30 a.m. on a Tuesday while I was 3 hours away, rewiring industrial grain processing equipment. What possible legitimate reason could there be for this scenario? Maybe Amanda had called him about some electrical emergency with the house wiring. Maybe there was a plumbing disaster that required immediate attention from someone with basic handyman skills. Maybe I was having a stress-induced hallucination brought on by breathing too much construction dust and cheap motel air conditioning that smelled like it hadn't been serviced since the Clinton administration. Then I remembered the baby monitor audio pickup feature that Amanda had specifically requested when we installed the system. I switched to the audio feed from our bedroom monitor, cranked the sensitivity settings to maximum, and listened with the focused attention of someone checking for electrical shorts in live wiring. What I heard next hit me like touching a 220-volt line with wet hands while standing in a puddle. That laugh. Amanda's laugh, unmistakable and crystal clear, coming from our bedroom at 2:30 in the morning. Not just any laugh either. It was that genuine, carefree, actually amused laugh that I used to hear all the time, back when we first started dating. The laugh she made when I tried to cook dinner and inevitably triggered the smoke detector with my ambitious but poorly executed attempts at culinary creativity. The laugh that I hadn't heard, directed at anything I'd said or done in at least 18 months, maybe longer. That authentic happiness was happening in Carl's presence at 2:30 a.m., while I was lying alone in a contractor motel room thinking about wire gauges, voltage drops, and how much I missed sleeping in my own bed. Then I heard his voice, muffled but unmistakably recognizable through the audio feed. "Should probably put that phone on silent, babe. Don't want Jake calling and ruining the mood again." Again. Like this was routine. Like they'd been coordinating their schedules around my work travel for weeks or months, turning my business trips into opportunities for whatever this betrayal situation actually was. The pieces fell into place with all the subtle grace of a main electrical panel. Explosion. The late nights Amanda spent updating patient files and preparing compliance documentation. Carl's constant presence around our house, always volunteering to help with household projects, I was perfectly capable of handling myself. The way Amanda had been emotionally distant but kept claiming she was just stressed about healthcare regulations, changes, and insurance verifications, procedure updates. All of it, every single red flag I'd rationalized and explained away with the trusting stupidity of someone who assumes the best about people closest to him, suddenly made perfect, horrible, crystal clear sense. I could have screamed loud enough to wake every contractor in the motel. I could have cried like someone whose entire understanding of his life had just been revealed as an elaborate fiction. I could have thrown my phone across the room and watched it shatter against that water-stained wall with its peeling paint and decades of accumulated sadness from traveling workers. I could have called immediately, demanding explanations, begging for this to be something other than what it obviously was, making a complete fool of myself while they scrambled to come up with some believable explanation for why my best friend was answering audio calls from my wife's bedroom at 2:30 on a Tuesday morning. But instead, something really interesting happened. I got calm. Really, really calm. Like supernatural, almost scary calm. The kind of calm that probably comes from 12 years of working with high-voltage electricity, where one wrong decision, one moment of panic or poor judgment kills you instantly and possibly takes out everyone else on the job site. You learn to think clearly under pressure when electricity is involved. You learn to diagnose problems methodically before attempting any repairs. You learn that rushing into electrical troubleshooting without proper analysis just creates more dangerous situations and potentially catastrophic consequences. I took a deep breath, stared at the popcorn ceiling of my contractor-grade motel room with its mysterious stains and questionable ventilation, and started thinking like a licensed electrician instead of a betrayed husband. First rule of electrical troubleshooting: identify the complete scope of the problem before you start attempting any fixes. Rushing in without proper diagnosis just creates more problems and potentially life-threatening situations for everyone involved. I opened my phone's recording application and started documenting everything with the methodical precision of someone conducting a safety inspection. Screenshots of the garage camera showing Carl's truck with detailed timestamps. Audio recordings from the bedroom monitor capturing enough conversation to confirm exactly what was happening behind my back. GPS data from my phone proving my location 3 hours away at the exact time these activities were occurring. I was building a case file like I was preparing evidence for a workplace safety violation investigation. Over the next 2 hours, I methodically gathered digital evidence while they apparently had no idea their activities were being recorded by security systems I'd installed and maintained myself. The audio pickup caught enough conversation and fragments to confirm this wasn't some one-time mistake or moment of weakness. This was routine. This was planned. This was an ongoing situation that had been happening while I trusted them both completely. Timestamps, location data, recorded proof that would hold up in any court proceeding or arbitration hearing. I was approaching this betrayal like an electrical code compliance investigation, gathering documentation that would be legally admissible and professionally unassailable. Then I started researching Amanda's specific job responsibilities, particularly her access to patient medical records and insurance claim information. See, when you've been married to someone for 8 years, you pick up detailed information about their work responsibilities, especially when they talk about patient privacy regulations and medical compliance procedures during dinner conversations. Amanda handled patient files, insurance claims, billing codes, treatment records, all that sensitive medical data that's protected by federal law under HIPAA regulations. Healthcare information, portability, and accountability. Act violations aren't just grounds for termination or professional licensing issues. They're federal crimes, like potential prison time serious. And if Amanda was sharing patient information inappropriately, especially for financial gain or personal benefit, that wasn't just marriage-ending betrayal. That was federal criminal activity that could result in years of incarceration and permanent professional destruction. I spent the remainder of that sleepless night digging deeper into Carl's creative procurement business model and his relationship with Amanda's medical access. Turned out his equipment acquisition methods were significantly more criminal than estate sales and Craigslist deals from contractors going out of business. Construction tool theft, fraudulent insurance claims, working without proper permits and licensing. Carl wasn't just cutting corners to save money. He was building an entire criminal enterprise out of building code violations, stolen equipment, And what I was beginning to suspect was systematic insurance fraud involving medical documentation that only someone with Amanda's access level could provide. When I finally fell asleep around 6 a.m., it was the sleep of someone who just figured out how to wire a very complicated electrical system that was going to deliver exactly the voltage these particular problems required. I woke up the next morning genuinely expecting to feel like someone had ripped my chest open and replaced my heart with a junction box full of live wires, broken connections, and years of accumulated regret. You know, the standard post-betrayal emotional package that comes with discovering your wife is basically running a medical fraud operation with your best friend while you're working honest union jobs to pay for the lifestyle that's supporting their criminal activities. But instead, I felt focused. Actually, better than focused. I felt like I'd just diagnosed a complex electrical problem and knew exactly which circuits needed to be isolated, which breakers needed to be thrown, and which components needed to be permanently disconnected to fix the entire system. The morning sunlight was streaming through those motel curtains that never quite closed properly, and I just lay there taking inventory of my emotional state, like checking voltage readings on a digital multimeter. Sadness, present but manageable, like background electrical noise that doesn't interfere with the main signal. Anger, definitely there, but controlled and channeled appropriately into productive problem-solving activities. Desperate need for revenge, surprisingly absent from the emotional equation. What I felt most was a professional obligation to ensure that federal crimes were properly reported to the appropriate authorities, and that people who violated workplace safety, legal compliance, and professional ethics faced the consequences their actions deserved. I checked my phone after turning it back on. 23 missed calls and messages, mostly from Amanda asking about my project timeline, when I expected to finish the Millfield job, and whether I'd be coming home for the weekend. Nothing seemed unusual on the surface, just the standard check-ins from a wife who was apparently very interested in my work schedule for reasons that had absolutely nothing to do with missing me or wanting to spend time together. I turned the phone off again and drove to the truck stop diner across from the motel. I needed coffee strong enough to restart a dead battery, calories sufficient to fuel serious strategic planning, and time to organize my next moves like I was designing an electrical system that absolutely could not fail under any circumstances. The diner was packed with contractors and truckers, all looking various degrees of caffeinated and professionally exhausted. I recognized the type, guys who work with their hands, solve complex problems for a living, and have exactly zero patience for people who think rules and regulations don't apply to them or their criminal side businesses. I ordered coffee that could probably strip paint off walls and the biggest breakfast they served. When you're about to rewire your entire life and potentially destroy several other people's lives in the process, you need proper fuel for the work ahead. That's when I started making calls, not to divorce lawyers or marriage counselors, but to people who understood workplace safety violations, insurance fraud, and contractors who operate outside legal boundaries. My union representative first, then my insurance agent who'd handled claims involving fraudulent contractor activities, and finally a buddy named Rico Martinez who worked as an investigator for the state licensing board and specialized in unlicensed contractor fraud cases. See, when you've got IBEW connections and 12 years of legitimate electrical work, you've got access to people who know how to handle criminal violations of professional standards, insurance fraud involving construction injuries, and medical privacy violations that cross federal crime thresholds. By the time I finished my eggs, hash browns, and enough bacon to supply a small construction crew, I had appointments scheduled for the following week. Not for marriage counseling or emotional support services, but for reporting suspected federal crimes to the appropriate investigative authorities. Rico was particularly interested when I mentioned the potential connection between medical records access and fraudulent workers' compensation claims. Jake, if someone's using patient information to file fake injury reports and collect insurance payouts, we're talking about federal healthcare fraud. That's FBI territory, not just state licensing violations. I drove back to the Millfield job site that morning with a completely different perspective on life. Amanda and Carl thought they were running some clever little side operation, using her medical access to help him file fraudulent injury claims and collect insurance payouts while I worked honest union jobs to fund the lifestyle that was supporting their criminal enterprise. What they didn't realize was that they just handed me the complete blueprint for their own professional and legal destruction. See, when you work construction and electrical systems professionally, you learn that every circuit has weak points. Every system has breaking points where too much current will trip the breaker or blow the fuse. Amanda and Carl had been running way over their rated capacity for months, and all I had to do was document the overload and report it to the proper authorities. The beauty of federal crimes is that they investigate themselves once you point them in the right direction with proper documentation and evidence. I spent the next 10 days finishing the Millfield electrical project while quietly building my case file like I was preparing for the most important safety inspection of my career. Photos, recorded conversations, documented timelines, financial records I could access through our joint banking accounts showing suspicious deposits and unexplained income that didn't match Amanda's legitimate medical practice salary. Rico Martinez proved invaluable during this evidence-gathering phase. Through his state licensing board connections, he helped me understand exactly which federal agencies needed to receive which specific types of documentation to trigger proper investigations. "Jake, what you're describing sounds like a systematic scheme," Rico explained. During one of our calls, medical records access being used to create false injury documentation for insurance fraud. If they've been doing this for months, we're probably talking about total fraud amounts exceeding $150,000, which puts this into serious federal crime territory. When I finally came home from Millfield on a Thursday afternoon, Amanda was all smiles and concern about my extended project. Carl happened to drop by that same evening. What an incredible coincidence, to welcome me back and catch up on how the electrical work had progressed. I played the role of the oblivious husband perfectly, tired from 3 weeks of commercial electrical installation, focused on getting caught up on household maintenance, completely unaware that anything had changed in our relationship dynamic while I was away, earning legitimate income to support our household. They both relaxed visibly, probably thinking they'd successfully avoided any suspicion about their activities. That Friday morning, I made my reports to the appropriate authorities. HIPAA violation complaint filed with the Department of Health and Human Services, complete with recorded evidence of Amanda discussing patient information inappropriately. Insurance fraud report submitted to the State Attorney General's office with documentation of Carl's fraudulent claims pattern. Unlicensed contractor complaint filed with the State Licensing Board showing his violations of building codes and permit requirements. Each report was backed up with documented evidence, recorded conversations, and timeline verification that would meet federal investigation standards. Then I waited. Federal investigations take time, but they're thorough and methodical. When they decide to flip the right breakers, the entire criminal system shuts down permanently. The investigation took 8 months of systematic evidence gathering by federal agents who specialize in healthcare fraud and insurance scams. 8 months of watching Amanda and Carl slowly realize that their medical fraud operation had attracted the attention of agencies who have unlimited resources and federal prosecution authority. During this period, I met Sarah Chen, a nurse practitioner who worked at the emergency clinic, where I had been called to repair some faulty electrical outlets. She was professional, intelligent, genuinely interested in workplace safety standards, and found my commitment to proper electrical codes attractive rather than boring. We started having coffee together, then dinner, and eventually she moved into my life like someone who actually understood professional ethics and personal integrity. Sarah represented everything Amanda wasn't: honest, hardworking, committed to helping people rather than exploiting them for financial gain. The federal indictments came down on a Tuesday morning while I was installing a new electrical panel for a family whose previous contractor had wired their kitchen addition. So, dangerously, it was basically a fire hazard waiting to happen. My phone buzzed with a news alert about arrests in a medical fraud scheme involving a local practice manager and unlicensed contractor. Amanda got 3.5 years federal prison and lost her medical licensing permanently. Carl got 5 years, plus massive fines and restitution payments exceeding $180,000. The federal government also seized his truck, his tools, and pretty much everything else he owned through civil forfeiture laws designed to recover assets obtained through criminal activity. I filed for divorce while Amanda was processing through county jail, awaiting federal sentencing. No drama, no emotional confrontations, just paperwork and asset division handled by attorneys who specialized in cases involving federal crime convictions. Amanda called me collect from federal prison exactly once, about 6 months into her sentence. "Jake, please, I know you reported us. I can explain everything. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "Amanda," I said calmly, "you used your medical access to commit federal crimes with my best friend. You violated patient privacy laws and insurance regulations while I worked honest union jobs to support our household. There's really nothing to explain." Then I hung up and blocked all future collect calls from federal correctional facilities. 2 years later, life had transformed completely. Rodriguez and Associates had expanded into a legitimate electrical contracting business with proper licensing, comprehensive insurance, and 6 full-time employees specializing in commercial safety inspections and residential service calls. Sarah and I had moved into a better house with a professional workshop garage and enough space for Sparky, Circuit, and our new rescue cat, Voltage. We were planning a wedding for next spring, something built on honesty, professional respect, and shared values about legal compliance and personal integrity. Some storms don't destroy you. They just clear out the faulty wiring so you can install something that actually works safely and reliably for years to come.